What to know before you start laying a backsplash in your kitchen. This type of tile is a lot harder to lay because it doesn't have the mesh backing. Where those come with a mesh backing, you could just spread your mastic down. For beginners who don't know what mastic is, it's like a mortar, gooey stuff. It has the consistency of peanut butter. To be spreading it on the wall with a trowel, 1/4 inch. Smaller tiles, you can use the 3/16 inch trowel, because they're smaller tiles, but these bigger tiles need more play. And for you beginners who don't know that these tools exist, this is a spacer. You can pick these up on eBay really cheap, 100, 200 of them at a time for like 30 bucks or so. But what this does, it goes behind the tile like that. There's different sizes. And when you do that, this tool here goes like that, and it cranks it and pulls the two tiles together so there's no lippage. Because once you start pressing on that tile up against the wall, it's hard to get it to come back forward. This will make sure there's no lippage. So whether you're using a system like this to pull this forward or not, and these do break off, once it hardens, you just hit them sideways and they'll snap right off, then you can grout your lines. You can use a float to press on your tiles when you have them against the wall to make them level. A float, and you will press on them real softly, but it presses them in a wider area where you're not using your fingers and making it look like crap. Got it here, and I laid down this Schluter trim, and if this is not straight, this countertop right here was off like that, so I had to take this whole cabinet out, put some shims underneath it, and then have this where it's perfectly straight and level. Make sure to put a level bar on that to make sure it's going straight. If this is not straight, or your starting line is not straight, you're gonna see it in every tile. So do not start your project without making sure that's going straight. Also, dry laying, whether you're doing a backsplash or a floor, but this isn't tiled, it was tiled earlier when I did that years ago. You're gonna dry lay your tile. What that means is I took each tile and I started to the left and I put a spacer underneath there, and that's how I got this line. You can see it's off a little because there's no space under there. I dry laid it, I marked it, and I marked the next one. You see these little spacers? That accounts for the spacing. And I went all the way up, and I wanted to see where it would end up, and it actually ends up. Second, let me go to the side here. You see how that? I'm gonna be cutting some of the tile. So because you don't want to get to the top and then you got a little sliver right there. So that's not gonna happen for me here. I moved it all the way across. You could see I accounted for each spacing of each line, went all the way to the end and saw where it was going to end up, which is good. I'm gonna cut some off. You don't wanna end up with a little sliver at the end like that. If that makes sense for you beginners who are gonna take this on. I've also made a template here, and I'm gonna put these tiles in thirds. So they're gonna not be in the center, but they're gonna be in the third of each tile. Having a template comes in handy when you're doing a job like this. So you see how I got it marked in thirds? The next row above it is gonna fall right above it. And I also made sure that I wasn't gonna have a sliver on this end, and so on. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if I'm the best teacher or the worst. When I start this project, I am gonna tile this side, but what I'm gonna do is finish this whole side, not worry about this side until that side is complete, and then this side is gonna overlap, and also this must be straight and level. If it's not level, this one was off also, I had to pull this cabinet all the way out and reset it. Because if this is not level, along with that being leveled this way, then all your tiles, think about it, is gonna be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa going up, and you'll see that line coming out like that. Okay, so I think I went over everything right now, and we're gonna get started on this. Hopefully I fit a lot of information, tips and tricks for you guys in here before you get started and what to know when you're tiling. If this video helped you out, just give me a thumbs up. You can continue watching as it progresses. I want to point out to you that if you don't use a spacer in between your tiles, your measurements going left and right and this way better be perfect, because if not, you're not going to have any play to adjust these in between. Because sometimes if you have a crooked wall and you can just go just a little bit, like a hair off, and when you got your grout line, nobody knows anything where there's a little bit of play in there. That's why sometimes you see people use bigger grout lines. I'm going with 1/8 of an inch, and I think that'll look nice on this backsplash. This is a listing on eBay, so you guys can look for the leveling system kit if needed, and they're pretty cheap on there. Use a Schluter trim. I think it's upside down over here. Oh, there we go. And that just tells you the size I'm using. There is a Q-shaped one that wraps around the tile. You're probably gonna have to custom order that. Sold on homedepot.com or your local box. Show you guys how you get started. I put a little bit of this mastic on my trowel, whatever you want to call it, and I'm spreading it across at that 1/4 inch, so it's got that thickness. A wet rag handy that's going to come in real handy, wiping up little touch-ups and whatnot. Place my first tile down. I got my spacers over here. I did not press hard on this at all because I want to press on it with my float with a bigger area. I do not press yet until I got about 3 or 4 of these on. I want to point out one more time and tell you guys how important it is to dry lay your tile, because knowing where your tiles are going to land in your project is key to having a really beautiful backsplash. Makes any sense, because once you start laying this tile and you think you're just gonna, I don't need to do that, I'm gonna get started, and you start doing it and you end up having to cut slivers, or your wall is lopsided and now your tile job is going up or down. You don't know the way it's gonna look. I know the way my tile job is gonna look before I start, because I know everything's gonna come out perfect because I already dry laid it and drew it out, and it took me an extra 10 minutes of my life to make sure that this job is gonna look so amazing. You guys know you don't have to use the spacer leveling kit. I was just putting that on there, letting people know that that is available for beginners who are worried about it. It is a smaller tile and you could probably tweak it. I have this little tool here. It's a paint can opener. You could also bend the tip of a piece of metal, screwdriver, paper clip, and you can get behind that tile and pull it out just a little bit if you think you've got it too deep. But I think I got my skill pretty good where I don't need to use the spacers leveling on the smaller tile. If you think you're done with your project, don't walk away without cleaning all your little joints. Use like a little flathead screwdriver or even one of these spacers right here to get all that out, so when you go to put your grout, you're not sitting there trying to clean the stuff out that's hard as a rock or dried. If you've never worked with mastic before, they actually say this product never dries. I don't know why they say that, but it holds pretty good for a wall tile. I wouldn't recommend it on floor tile or anything like that, but works great on these backsplashes and stuff where you have time to work with the project and not have to worry about it drying on you in like 15 minutes. So the template comes in handy. I laid it over here, and now I'm going to place it right where my line goes. And if you're just doing halves on these, make a template that only has halves. So there we go. Give you guys an idea how it's going to be in thirds, like a little. Okay, so pretty much you could see what's going on with the pattern that I'm doing over here. To cut these pieces, you can use a piece of paper like this, mark it, go to your template right here, lay it over your tile, mark it, and cut it with a wet saw. A wet saw is a tile saw that uses water and a very fine blade. And just look at this project. If you've never done anything like this, like an art class project, don't walk away and let this dry. If you feel a bump, deal with it. If you feel a bump right here and you're not going to use that system I showed in the beginning, push. It'll squirt out some of this. Just push in the area to get it to make sure it's flush, because if you let it dry and walk away, then you're going to have a problem on your hands where you're gonna have to rip it out because you don't want to deal with it. So just before you walk away, clean all your edges all up in here. Make sure that everything is level. Just feel around. Go over every tile and just feel it. Make sure you're happy with it before you walk away, because once this sets, it's pretty much supposed to be permanent. Point out real quick, if you're copying exactly what I'm doing, the reason I'm doing it like this is because if I would have continued on my second line, this thing would have been wobbly. The bottom row has to be fully completed before you can go on to the next level to keep going straight across. And that's why you see me doing this pattern. And now I'm gonna stop, clean this all up, start doing my cuts because I can't move forward. So I'm gonna finish that bottom line and work my way up. But I'm gonna clean this, got a cardboard box right here. And this is really great for cleaning off your tools. You just scrape it like that, throw all my garbage in. I'm gonna clean up all these lines in here and make sure that none of these joints have mastic, whatever you wanna call it, because it'll make my life a lot easier. You can use Q-tips and water and it will come right out. If I missed anything and anybody has anything to add about this video, leave a comment, teach us something. I'm always ready to learn, especially from trolls and haters. A ton of those on YouTube. About 30 minutes cleaning all the joints and wiping it down with a wet washcloth. Coming along real good though. All right, so for you people who don't understand how to get this exact measurement here, you're gonna take your tile, flip it around, place it where it needs to go. The other tile ends right here. I tried to mark it for you guys. I'm gonna count for the grout line and I'm gonna mark it right there. Lift it up just a hair to catch that other mark. Count for the grout line. Now I have my line. I'm gonna come over here. When I cut this tile and flip it over where it needs to go, the cut will be in the corner and it'll get overlapped by the other wall, or if you're gonna use some Schluter trim, but the measurement will be perfect to where it needs to go. Let me try to flip this over to give you guys an idea. See what's going on here? It's exactly where it needs to be. If it seems too difficult for you, you can use a piece of paper, mark that, lay this over the tile where it needs to go, and make sure that you cut on the side that is gonna be up in the corner against the wall, not that side. You don't want your cut side to be right here. Never used a wet saw before. This is a wet saw. And you let the saw do the cutting. Do not push unless you're just pushing really slow, if that makes any sense. Check it out. That's not easy doing that one-handed. You really need two hands on it, but hopefully you guys get the idea. That's how you cut glass. That's the side that's gonna go up against the wall, but not a bad cut. All right, so this is the last tile I'm gonna do and record it, so you guys pretty much got the idea. I don't think you guys need me anymore. So let's finish this off with this last tile. See how this goes on. No, I don't care. I don't care. Huh? Spacesuit. Alright, that's it. Just in case you want to purchase the same tile, I went to HomeDepot.com and this is the name and the look of the tile. 3 by 12 inch.